The novel's original title, under which Golding sent it out to publishers, was not Lord of the Flies, but Strangers from Within. It went first to Jonathan Cate Publishing, who returned it, writing that it regretfully did not seem to them that Golding had been wholly successful in working out a promising idea. They did, however, suggest he try his luck with Andre Deutsch. No luck there either. The rejections piled up. Then, on the 14th of September 1953, he sent his tattered typescript to Faber & Faber. And the professional reader employed by Faber & Faber to assess new works of fiction was a lady called Polly Perkins. Now, having read or at least looked at Golding's typescript, she recorded her harsh verdict in the corner of his letter. Time, the future, absurd and uninteresting fancy about the explosion of an atom bomb on the colonies. A group of children who land in jungle country near New Guinea. Rubbish and dull. Pointless. Now, this assessment is followed by an R in a circle, signifying that it was rejected. And that would have been that if a certain Charles Monteith had not intervened. A future legendary publisher himself, in 1953, he was just starting out. Now, Golding was his first catch, though when he picked the typescript of Strangers from Within out of the reject pile one Tuesday afternoon in late September 1953, he was, to begin with, by no means sure just how much of a catch it truly was. It had a dog-eared, shop-soiled look, and the first dozen or so pages were yellowish at the edges, showing that they at least had been read a number of times, and the remainder were wider, clearly illustrating where interest had waned. Now, the first pages described a nuclear war and contained no characters at all. Later, attention switched earthwards, where there was a hurriedly organized evacuation of school children. Now, the planes they flew had detachable cabins, aka passenger tubes, which could float to Earth beneath giant parachutes. Then the focus switched to a particular plane, then to a fierce air battle over the Pacific, then to the release of the passenger tube, then to a tropical island, and at last to some humans who were all boys. Now, as Monteith continued to read, and particularly after he read beyond those rather unfocused first pages, he found that he was increasingly gripped. The island was brilliantly real, and the boys seemed to be real boys. Now, having been a, quote, a fat, spectacled boy at school himself, Monteith squirmed for Piggy when Ralph betrayed the secret of Piggy's nickname to the accompaniment of the appalling, sycophantic laughter of the crowd. A few things stood out to him by the time he reached the end. The flaws were first and foremost, followed closely by the perceived potential. Now, polishing away the flaws he felt would push the potential to the forefront. Now, the easiest to fix seemed to be the overuse of commas and Piggy's overrepresented common speech by the use of misspellings. Of a more serious nature were structural flaws, which included an interpretation of atomic war, an air battle above the island highlighted by a dead airman parachuting, and a naval battle between two opposing fleets. Now, even more troubling was the Christ-like character known as Simon. Like Christ, Simon found himself in the wilderness, in this case, a jungle. There, a godlike voice assured him of Ralph's safe return home. He also led so-called good dances on the beach. Rounding off his messianic impression, he squared up against evil, the pig's head, aka the Lord of the Flies. Well, for Monteith's taste, Simon's escapades were far removed from believable. He suggested to Golding that miraculous Christ-like occurrences should be made ambivalent, eliminated, or toned down. Now, typical for him, William Golding's manuscripts were written without regards to ruled lines, cramming as much text as possible onto each single page, as evident within the green 142 wide-lined hardcover school exercise book containing the original manuscript, which has outlived the original typescript reviewed by Monteith. Now, included with this original manuscript are red-colored sporadic notes regarding what Anne thinks. The note, 1600 hours, 2nd October, 1952, provides the finishing touch, which is presumed to be the date and time of completion. Now, the majority of the final product is present in the original, Conversations, Simon's body caught up in the sea current, strong winds rushing the dead parachutist down the mountainside. It's all there. Refined, of course, in the published version. Although Monteith found the work to be odd and imperfect, he stood firm on the strong upside he sensed for it. So, at the next Faber and Faber committee meeting, he made known his thoughts and his desire to speak with the author. Now, Geoffrey Faber had his doubts, yet he was prepared to stand with Monteith along with two other editors. Now, highly regarded sales director W.J. Crawley, on the other hand, was slow to chime in. It took a few weeks, but he ultimately decided the book was unpublishable. Now, a tense discussion arose between he and Monteith, but was put to rest by the chairman, who decided he didn't want to step on Monteith's enthusiasm. There was a condition, however. Monteith was allowed to discuss the piece with Golding, but there would be no commitment whatsoever to publishing from Faber's. Now, giving the theological tone of the typescript and never having met the author, Monteith envisioned a young clergyman. To his surprise, however, a young, neat-bearded, flannel trousers and tweed jacket-clad gentleman appeared. Now, what really made the pieces come together? William Golding was a teacher. Now, who else could be more qualified to know just how dreadful boys could be? Monteith made his suggestions for revisions, and Golding promised to consider them. Golding worked, it seemed, to Monteith amazingly fast, and within a mere 3 days sent the amended version of the beginning, middle, and end back to Monteith. He attached a letter pointing out that he'd removed the separate prologue, interlude, and epilogue, as well as the nuclear war, the air battle, and the sea battle. All were merged into the body of the text. Now, in the end, the changes went above and beyond what Monteith had hoped for. Hence, on January 10, 1954, he sent a complete draft up the publishing ladder. A month after that, on February 11th, Faber announced that they were prepared to publish the novel. Well, one little problem remained: the title. Monteith passed on some suggestions: This Island's Mine, Beast in the Jungle, An Island of Their Own, Fun and Games, and apparently his own favorite, The Isle is Full of Noises. Golding then threw in an idea: To End an Island. Now, Alan Pringle, another editor at Faber's, took a shot: Lord of the Flies. That one sealed the deal. Production commenced in March. Golding requested that the dedication, which read, To My Mother and Father, have a page all to itself in the front of the book. At last, on Friday, September 17th, 1954, Lord of the Flies was released, 1 year and 3 days after Golding sent it to Faber's. Now, though critically acclaimed, Lord of the Flies was not a runaway success in the bookshops. At the end of its first year, 4,662 copies were sold, a decent number, however, by no means a bestseller. Time would change that, as by 2015, more than 10 million copies were sold worldwide. And William Golding would go on to write another 11 novels before his death at the age of 81 in 1993.